Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, America. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here. Great show for you today. We have Brian Kilmate giving us an analysis on what happened in China. Dr. Peter Michalos, live long and prosper. Senator Ron Johnson, Lynn Shaw, worried about our kids. Senator Joni Ernst, Jay Clayton, the U.S. Attorney from the Southern District, Sean Spicer, and Senator Rick Scott. And let's start off with Governor Ron DeSantis. With us today is Governor DeSantis of Florida. Well, Governor DeSantis, tell us about education in Florida. Tell us about making Florida drug-free and quality of life. And quality of life is very important.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, just think about education. So we were the first state in the country a few years ago to not allow cell phones in class in K-12. And when I did that, MSNBC called me a fascist for not having cell phones. Now, all the data is in. Even blue states are following suit because you can't have kids buried in their phones the whole time. That is going to pay big dividends for us going forward. Also, in terms of higher education, we've really reoriented our university system away from the traditional liberal bias towards more classical education. And we even have an ability for all tenured professors. They have to undergo review now in Florida every 5 years. They can be terminated, these tenured professors, and that's had a hugely positive impact on that. So, education, part of it is you got to provide the right framework so that your K-12 and universities can succeed, and we've done that in Florida, and we're proud of that. Now, on the drug use, you and I mentioned it the other day, Florida's had a 48% decrease in fentanyl-related overdoses. And part of the reason we've been able to do that, we've been very strong on the illegal immigration and the drug cartels. We have led the country in working with the Trump administration for the identification and removal of illegal aliens, including, unfortunately, we have cartel members that were let in under Biden. You've got people that are running drugs. Our view is we need to get them out of our communities. So that's been a huge thing. The other thing that we've done that's been really important is when people go into hospitals from an overdose, if you just discharge them, then they're going to use again, right? And so we now have a coordinated program where we're staying with some of these folks, helping them to get weaned off the addiction to the opioids. That has reduced the relapses as well. And the thing about it is there's all kinds of things that happen in society that you got to deal with. But I would say one of the things that has touched almost everyone in some way in the last 5 or 10 years has been the opioid overdose and the fentanyl overdose. Everybody knows either a family member, a friend, a loved one who has some connection to these tragedies, and no one thought we'd be able to make this much headway, but we're doing it. I do think the border under Trump has made a positive difference by not having everyone and their brother coming in. But we've obviously done a lot in the state of Florida that's helped set the pace, and we're proud of that.
And let me ask another question. Do you have any common sense Democrats left in Florida?
Yeah, I think that there are common sense voters who are still consider themselves Democrats, but I think the political class on the Democratic Party has just lost their marbles. They just aren't doing basic things that appeal to regular people. And I can tell you a good example. You look at California, they would let you steal $999 worth of stuff, and they wouldn't prosecute you unless you stole $100. In Florida, we did the opposite. We did the strongest crackdown on retail theft anywhere in the country. What has that done? Yes, it's meant less theft in Florida than in California. And in fact, there was a group, a gang that would steal in New York, actually, and then they would come down when they would sell all get the proceeds, and they'd party in Florida. Then they'd go back to New York and steal again. And they actually did an interview with CNN, and the lady was like, well, why don't you just steal in Florida since you want to be down there partying? They're like, well, you steal in Florida, they put you in jail, so we don't steal in Florida. So that's had a good thing. But I'll tell you, when you start to see store shelves being looted, when you see some of these, quote, smaller crimes that are allowed, it creates a negative impact on the overall quality of life. It leads to more serious crimes being committed. Rudy did that back in New York. He understood that in the 90s when he did all what he did. So we take that very seriously, and I think that we have contributed to a much higher quality of life than we would have if we adopted these Democrat policies in places like New York and San Francisco.
We're having a lot of problem with judges in New York allowing people that have committed violent crimes back into the streets of New York. Are you having similar problems in Florida?
We have had problems. And at the state level, the remedy, if a judge is not going to do what is necessary to protect the public, it's one thing to just have a different view of the law. But when you're releasing dangerous people and then those convicts end up killing somebody or raping a child or something horrific, that judge should be impeached. And unless you start holding these judges accountable, they're going to continue to pull this crap. So I'm in favor at the state level for state judges, the legislature bringing impeachment cases in these rare, and they're rare in Florida, but in these rare instances where there's been a complete neglect of duty to protect the public, I think that's absolutely appropriate. I also think it's appropriate for federal judges when they go off the reservation. The problem is the Congress, they really can't get much of anything done, so I don't have high hopes that they're going to be able to do it. But the reason why judges are out of control, particularly trial court judges in this country, is because they're never held accountable for the damage that they cause with these bad rulings and bad decisions.
Governor DeSantis, thank you for everything you've done in Florida. Look forward to seeing you in the near future, and God bless you and God bless America.
God bless.
The Cats Roundtable.
Calling in Senator Rick Scott from Florida. And I gave out these numbers the other day. 24 million people in Florida, just about, and the budget is less than New York City, which is 8.5 million people. What are you guys doing so right?
To balance the budget. It's actually not that hard. We do what families care about, and we don't waste our money on other things. We work on getting people jobs. We work on making sure kids have great school choice and they get a great education. Keep the cost of living down. Focus on law enforcement. Make sure you can be safe in your neighborhood. When I became governor in 2011, New York had more people than Florida. I think 8 years later, we had 4 million more people in Florida than in New York, because people are tired of the taxes, the fees, the add to New York. Like, you look at Mondami right now, you see this anti-Jew, anti-Semitism, anti-Israel attitude that Mondami has, and it's now is happening to my Jewish friends. I mean, they're protesting in their neighborhood, and Mondami does nothing. They put their strobe lights in front of little Jewish boys. Mondami does nothing about it. So he's going to get. There's more people who are going to continue to leave New York City because of people like Mondami. I did a letter to the Department of Justice the other day. I want a thorough investigation of what's going on in New York City, and while Mondami won't hold anybody accountable, I want our Department of Justice to do the right thing and hold the people doing these things accountable to the full extent of the law.
I am praying. President Trump originally gave me the mission to get Curtis Lewa out of the election in New York City, and I failed it because Curtis stayed in, but he got the lowest number ever in Republican history, 7%. And President Trump said, I'd rather have a Democrat, Andrew Cuomo, than have a socialist. And it was a perfect storm. And I guess he got elected. I had said to him when I met with him, he's on the edge of disaster or on the edge of success.
Socialism has never worked. The only way people stay in power in socialism is they kill everybody that opposes them. But the violence right now in the streets in New York against Jews is extremely dangerous. These are terrorist sympathizers who only care about hurting our Jewish citizens and hurting Israel. So it's unlawful and un-American. So I wish that Mandami or Hochul or somebody up there, if not, I hope the Department of Justice is able to do something.
What else?
We've got to figure out how to make sure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. So I applaud President Trump for all his efforts to make sure Iran cannot kill us by getting a nuclear weapon into New York City or any other place in the country. So I know President Trump is working hard on this. Hopefully, the Iranian regime will come to their senses and they will never have a nuclear weapon, never have ballistic missiles. They'll stop being a death machine. They have been a death machine for 47 years, death machine to Americans for 47 years. It's the most evil group. You look at what she's done and Putin's done and the Ayatollah done, and you think, who wants to destroy other people's lives like this? Don't they care about somebody? So I applaud the president because he's trying his best to try to improve the world for all Americans.
One of the big things that we're all concerned about is the election in November. Any gut feeling?
Well, I'm hopeful that the Iranian conflict will be over. I think Kevin Warsh, the new chairman of the Federal Reserve, is going to have a difficult time cleaning it up, but he's smart. He's going to work hard. The problem we have with inflation, actually long term, is nothing the president can do. It's what Congress has to do. We have to balance the budget. We passed the budgets. We're running $2 trillion deficits. It's forcing the federal government to buy or issue another $2 trillion for the Treasury's year. So that makes it very difficult for interest rates to come down. But I know this president cares about balancing the budget. Unfortunately, we have a Congress now that doesn't. They want earmarks. Like we're spending money all over this country. Like there's money for a fake elephant exhibit on the New Jersey Turnpike, I think it is. I mean, you can't spend money. You wouldn't spend your money like this, John. Why is the government spending your money like this? It just makes you mad. Thousands of earmarks by these Democrats.
Well, Senator, all we can do is me and you and the people that care about our kids and grandkids to work harder and try to get some common sense in America. And the only thing that's going to change, the Democratic Socialist Party, Senator, has taken over the Democratic Party. And you know what it's going to take? It's going to take what happened in 1984. And the Republican Party has to win 49 states. And that way the Democratic Party will learn its lesson.
It's going to happen. I'm optimistic. People are mad. People are going to show up this November.
Well, Senator Rick Scott, thank you for calling in, and let's talk again real soon.
See you, John. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable.
On Wisconsin, grand old Badger State.
With us today is Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. Well, Senator, what keeps you up at night?
The fact that we're $39 trillion in debt, that, the Ayatollahs are still, unfortunately, in control because they've got the guns in Iran, and they do pose an existential threat to this country. A lot of people want to deny that, but they get a nuclear weapon. They've got the missile technology. They park a barge off our shore, lob a missile up there, detonate that high-altitude nuclear blast. That wipes out our electrical grid. That's existential to us. So I, for one, am highly appreciative of the fact that President Trump made the very difficult decision and honestly sticking by it. He's not declaring a false victory here. He's going to make sure that Iran never can become a nuclear power. Every president said that since the Ayatollahs took over. The only person who's effectively dealt with it was President Trump. Now, I wish America was completely supportive of what President Trump was doing. I think it would bring the war to an end, a successful end, a lot quicker.
Senator, the thing I worry most about is that something is going to go wrong with the voting. We know that voting is a problem, that we had problems in several states. Are things getting better? Do you feel good about Wisconsin? Are things getting better in Wisconsin?
Unfortunately not. I mean, in Wisconsin, for example, we have like over 7,000 people on our voter roll. We've got less than 4 million people registered to vote. That's a problem. The Democrats continue to push early voting. They keep expanding it, and collect ballots, further and further beyond the date of election. So Democrats, they're doing everything they can to make it easy to cheat. They resist any type of reforms that restore election integrity. And we need to do that. We need to restore confidence in our elections. It's not a good situation where in 2016 half of America thought there was an illegitimate result, Russia collusion hoax. Fast forward 4 years, the other half now doesn't agree with that elections. That's not good. We want everybody in America to have elections that are elections are fair, they're accurate. No matter who wins, it's a legitimate result, and that their legitimate votes not canceled out by fraudulent ones. So that's why I'm for the Save America Act. I'm for election integrity, but unfortunately, Democrats oppose it. And unless we end the filibuster, which I also am in support of, we're not going to give Democrats support to restore confidence in our election. They want to make it easy to cheat.
Well, I don't mind expanded voting if it's maybe for 5 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and that's it. But they're doing it for 2 weeks. And when you have it for 2 weeks, there's no way you can keep your eyes on what's going on at every hour of the day on voting. And also,
news breaks even before the election. So if you've cast your ballot weeks ahead of time, some news breaks, you're not going to be able to dial that back in. So, no, I mean, our founders, they set it in election day. I wish we'd pretty well adhere to that with some notable exceptions. If you're traveling, that kind of stuff, I'm not opposed to absentee ballots, but it should be completely controlled. There should be a reason for doing it as well. It was the Baker-Carter Commission, completely nonpartisan commission. Jimmy Carter, James Baker, said that the greatest threat for potential fraud in our elections is absentee ballots. And Democrat left has, used COVID to double the number of absentee ballots in that presidential election and doing everything they can to expand it. They want to make it easy to cheat. That tells you something.
If people don't understand voting and census, we're counting the migrants.
And again, most Americans are with us on this. The people who aren't are Democrat elected officials, because their goal is to turn America into one-party nation. That's why they flooded this country with millions of unvetted people, herded them into sanctuary cities and states, plus up the census count, get more members of Congress. Again, resist any election reforms to restore confidence and integrity to our elections. That's what they want to do. So I hope enough Americans are wise to that fact. I hope they don't want a one-party nation ruled by radical leftists, which is now the Democrat Party. But that's what we're up against. We're up against a party that has lost any kind of rationality and are dedicated to that they're only interested in power. And we know their policies are awful. I mean, socialism doesn't work. I hope New York City can survive Mamdani.
What are we doing? And you used to be a member of the Homeland Security. That mayor in California that admitted she was a double agent for China. I mean, what happened to you get shot for treason?
Well, remember the Biden administration, one of the first things that Joe Biden did is he canceled the China Initiative, which is all about using DOJ resources to investigate the Chinese theft of our intellectual property on colleges. So we know that China has infiltrated our colleges and universities. They've infiltrated medical journals. They've infiltrated most institutions in this country. And you have to read Sun Tzu's Art of War. It's how the Chinese operate. They don't operate by the rules we do. They want to replace America as a world superpower, and that would be a very bad thing for America or for the world, because the Chinese values, their governmental values of communism, are not good for freedom. It'd be horrible for the world. And so we need to resist it. But here in America, we have to have leaders like President Trump who fully understands this and is on the lookout for it and utilizes our law enforcement resources to try and root out the infiltration of the Chinese Communist Party here in America.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and God bless you, and God bless America.
God bless you. Take care.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today to talk about it, we have Senator Joni Ernst from the state of Iowa. And Senator Ernst, what the heck happened in China? It looks like things went well.
Well, I do think things went well, and I want to thank our president for being such a great negotiator. And it's important that the president has these discussions, even with people that we don't agree with on a lot of different topics. But trade is really important with China. My Iowa farmers love to hear that we're going to sell more soybeans to China. We think that's really important. But as well, the president stood strong on so many different issues. And, of course, he had our great Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, with him on this trip. And when it came to Taiwan, we heard the Secretary Rubio, say, quote, U.S. policy on the issue of Taiwan is unchanged as of today and as of the meeting that we had here today. And so we remain strong on standing by Taiwan, and the president is very clear about this. So I'm just really glad that, we have had such great success coming out of China.
Well, the good news is President Xi said on Thursday or Friday, he said we're not going to allow Iran to have any nuclear weapons, which was good news. And I am hoping that President Trump makes it China's responsibility to make sure Iran performs the right way.
And I loved when they were talking about that, the assistance to Iran, or what we had hoped would not be assistance to Iran by China. And, of course, the issue was raised about those nuclear capabilities. And so I'm glad that the United States and China are on the same page there. And then one of the other issues that was brought up as well was the flow of fentanyl. Those precursors that are coming into the United States. And China in the past, and hopefully not in the future, has been the principal source of U.S. fentanyl and the precursors. We've seen so many people through our communities affected by fentanyl, and it really needs to stop. So I'm glad that President Trump has raised this issue and that he will continue to work to protect our communities from the scourge of fentanyl.
And rumor has it, and I think it's going to happen, is that President Putin is going to go to China afterwards. And what I'm looking for is maybe if we can get the world powers of China and Russia and the United States to promote world peace, then I think it will be a great year in 2026.
I think so, too. And it's always such a noble goal. This is what we strive for. And we really do have the president of peace right now. And even when we see the actions that have gone on recently in Iran, it is because the president is bent on protecting the United States of America from the nuclear capabilities of Iran. And we know that maybe it's not a popular decision out there, but I absolutely believe it was the right decision by our president to engage Iran. We know that we are so much safer now than we were before we saw Operation Midnight Hammer and Operation Epic Fury.
Do you have any serious drug problems in Iowa?
We do, and when I talk to our sheriff's departments and our police departments, we do have fentanyl that has been creeping in, and oftentimes we see it coming from the major metro areas like Chicago. They'll run the drugs over the interstate into Iowa, and it's starting to affect some of our smaller communities. So fentanyl is an issue. We see a lot of meth in Iowa. I won't say it's pervasive or that, everyone's affected by it, but we certainly do have those touch points in our communities, and we've really got to get a handle on it before it really hurts Middle America.
Senator Joni Ernst, thank you so much for everything you've done, whether in the military or as a U.S. Senator, for our people, our America, our country, and let's catch up again real soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. With us today is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jake Clayton. Mr. Clayton, we have big items telling us about terrorism.
Well, John, the Southern District here in Manhattan, we presented a defendant who is charged with many terrorist-related counts, but most of all, supporting terror across Europe and attempting to support terror into the United States. These are many of the acts that you have seen across Europe attacking U.S. interests, European interests, and as set forth in the complaint unsealed today, acts inside the United States that were attempted at targets motivated at our houses of worship, but most of all, motivated to instill fear and division in America. And I am so proud of the FBI. I am so proud of my prosecutors here in New York that Mr. Al-Saidi is going to face justice here in New York.
How long do you think he's been trying to get this stuff done?
We allege 4 years, John. This is a sophisticated network using all of the tools that we read about today that allow foreign actors to engage in terror into the United States, using social media, using encrypted messages, using cryptocurrency to make payments, and using very sophisticated, coordinated messaging to radicalize others. This is something that we are tracking, and thank God that the U.S., that we have devoted the resources to bring these people to justice. I can tell you that but for the respect we have on the world stage, this man would not be in detention in New York City.
Now, was he acting on his own? Was there any particular government that you suspect was pushing him, or how does it work?
As alleged, and as I always want to make clear, in America, these are only allegations. We have to prove them in a court of law. But as alleged, he's working with both Hezbollah and with the IRGC.
So it's all coming from Iran and Iran-related terrorists. And
yes, John. Taking a step back, what do we know? And let's not forget this: that Iran used the money that they generated from selling oil for over 40 years to sow terror and dissension in the United States and in Europe and in the Middle East. And we now know that to a certainty. And thank God we've decided that after 40 years, enough is enough.
Who is paying some of these protesters? Any suspicion? Has the FBI or anybody been able to break down any of these people?
Let's take a look at some of the things that we are learning. Even from the complaint that you see today, you see that foreign financed activity is directed into the United States to sow the seeds of dissension in the United States. And John, my belief is that, put this particular situation aside, it is much greater than we could have ever expected. The amount of foreign money flowing through various channels, including entities posing as nonprofits and charities and having a public purpose, that are actually conduits for dissension, is something that we need to bring to a stop.
Do we have enough troops to do that? Do we have enough troops? Do we have enough U.S. attorneys that are dedicated to be able to do that?
We are doing so much more than we were several years ago, including using artificial intelligence tools and data. We need more data from these so-called charitable organizations. We need more data from our benefits distribution organizations. But with that data, we can better identify the bad actors. And I am telling you that AI is going to have a big impact on the business community. I think it's going to have an even bigger impact on the public sector, on law enforcement, on detecting benefits fraud, on identifying people who are here to do harm to Americans. And we should harness those tools as quickly as possible.
Anything else you want to tell the American people?
I want to tell the American people that at the Justice Department, at the Southern District, at the FBI, at the State Department, and all the way up to the top of the White House, to President Trump, that there are people working every day around the clock to protect them from actors like we're talking about today, to protect them from the cartels. John, just last week, we indicted a number of members of the government of Sinaloa, the state in Mexico where the Sinaloa cartel is centered. Those people are clearly looking to do harm to our fellow citizens, and we're going to stop it.
Jake Clayton, United States Attorney for the Southern District. Keep fighting for America. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and God bless you. And let's save America, Mr. Clayton. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
What really happened in China? We have Brian Kilmeade with us, and there's nobody that knows this situation better than Brian. Well, Brian...
So I just think it's funny how this whole thing evolved. China always prided themselves over, we're going to profile who we're dealing with, and we're going to understand what their hot buttons are and where the no-go lanes are and figure out how to push and prod. And that dates back to Nixon and Ford, and they tried to find people's weaknesses, which George W. Bush won, and and they thought, okay, Trump's easy, really simple guy. All you have to do is flower him with praise, with pageantry, and he'll be pliable. But he bought it. He thanked them, gave effusive praise, and then he hit them with the hardest tariffs imaginable. And then he ends up calling them out and breaking up relations after COVID. And they go ahead and move forward with a trade deal. And they think to themselves, I think, well, at least he's done. In 2020, we don't have to deal with this guy who's been very hard on us, calling us out on our trade practices. And then he's back. And now I think they say to themselves, yeah, he likes to be pandered to. He likes to be flattered. But he also is not going to affect what he does. And I think that is a more practical approach. While he enjoyed the pageantry, he's still a business guy that brought 30 CEOs, business people with him, when the Nixons and the Bushes, 41 and 43, would bring leading politicians, biggest names, would bring Kissinger along or anybody else. The president goes, no, I don't need those guys. In fact, I don't even need my commerce secretary. I'm going to bring my CEOs, and I'm looking to do deals. My sense is, John, they talking about the Boeing deal of 200 planes, and people say, well, it should have been 500. Well, they're making their own planes now, so 200 is a good order. I think they're going to be talking about different deals with those 30, but you don't just cut it on the spot. And he doesn't feel pressure to say, I got 9 deals on my 30 guys, and Tesla's going to be expanding. I think that he is really looking to create a relationship and de-escalate, but at the same time, look at what he's doing with Venezuela. Look what he's doing with Cuba. Where was John Radcliffe yesterday? He was in Cuba offering them, letting them know that we have a case being built on Raul Castro, meaning you're about to get the Maduro treatment, and you can get $100 million in aid if you give up your government, let us, put a guy in there with some democratic principles, and that is, these are all outlets for China. So the president could be nice and flatter, and I do think he likes President Xi. But what is he doing? He is actually kicking them out of Argentina, Bolivia, as well as now the latest one is Chile. And then you realize they're losing influence in all those Belt and Road programs, and at the same time, he really flat out flipped Venezuela. So now he comes to Iran, and it's a little bit harder than he thought, but at which time he talks about it and says, oh, yeah, you want to help? It's okay. Thanks for the offer. I don't need your help. And what his answer is, if I accept a favor, then I got to give a favor back. I really don't want to do that. So I think that what you had here is a guy that they understand each other. They're going to be able to talk to each other. And the reality of China's economy is not good. Here's why. They're not growing at the rate they need to grow. Here's why. 20% of their graduates are unemployed. They also have a situation where they are a decreasing deflation country. So they do not have enough people to fill their jobs. There was a single male policy. They were killing infants if their first baby was a girl because they wanted it to be a boy. And because of that, after 40 years, they have no women, and they got a decreasing population. This is a declining power. And I think Trump realizes it, and I think that she realizes that Trump realizes it. So I think the ground has been set. The respect is there. He showed them respect. That's their big thing. And I think that this is going to be a very interesting next 6 months. But now the story is going to be what happens in Iran. That was the semifinals. The finals is Iran.
And you're right. I think he knows that the most important thing to President Trump is the November elections. And it depends how China wants to play this whole situation. Do they want President Trump in as full power, or do they want the Democrats to reduce his power?
Well, I see. That's the thing. They got to watch it, because if they play a role in it, let's say decide we are not going to renew our pledge to deliver these rare magnets that they have and the other rare earth, that would send our economy into a tailspin. They play that card, and the president will know, I'm staying here for 4 years. Whether I have Congress or not, you're trying to go out of your way to make sure I don't. So then the president will have to recalculate this whole thing. My sense is that they return the visit in September. I think it's going to be relatively smooth. I think that judging by how Iran comes out, and if we could turn that around as a country, not turn that around, finish them off as a country, we watch oil and gas prices go down. And I think that you're going to see the President of the United States do something not many people thought possible, but it should have been done earlier. One of our best customers is going to be China. They're going to realize there's really no downside to buying oil and gas from us, except you got to pay full price. And you got natural gas. I mean, what we can do, and it's a quicker trip, and that would be something else that America could do good, solid business with. But I do worry, John, about the tech center. I do worry about bankers setting up in there. I just don't believe that China can be depended on to not steal our IP. I think it's in their unofficial constitution, and I do worry. Too about crackdowns. 1 minute they might decide to arrest 3 vice presidents at a bank because they don't like some made-up charge, and I don't think we want to get involved in that. To me, I'd let Canada go do that. I wouldn't mind increased relations. I like to keep it in a way that it doesn't compromise our security.
Thank you so much, Brian, for giving us your opinion. And let's pray for America.
Thanks so much, John. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today is Dr. Peter Michalos. Doctor, there's this new virus in town, and it may not allow us to live long and prosper. Tell us what the heck is going on.
Well, John, it's a topic that's in the news a lot, and everyone's concerned about it, so I thought we'd start by first letting people know what the hantavirus is. And the hantavirus is an RNA virus, just like COVID is an RNA virus, the flu is an RNA virus, and it's named after the Hanta River in South Korea. And what happens is that when you have mouse droppings and the urine droppings in the soil, it tends to, if it gets aerosolized or you try to sweep it or clean it and you inhale it, you get this hantavirus, which can be up to 38% fatal. And what happened is the first cases, they didn't realize that were during the Korean War. The soldiers, when the helicopters would come in, the fan blades of the helicopters generated so much wind that they shot downward and aerosolized and blew up all the soil, and some of the soldiers were breathing it in, and they caught hantavirus. And they didn't know what it was back in the Korean War.
So this is not a new virus. It's existed.
Yes, it's been around. What's different with this particular virus, the Andes variant, is that this variant can go human to human. And it all started on this nice little cruise ship with a Dutch cruise ship and this Dutch couple that were into bird watching. They decided they're going to go and climb into a landfill that was filled with rats and mice, and they wanted trying to chase to get some pictures of this bird. Those are the 2 people that brought it back to the cruise ship, and they both ended up actually dying. And they spread it throughout the cruise ship, and now there's 11 people in isolation out in Nebraska where they have them isolated with this virus. This virus presents with fever, fatigue, diarrhea, severe headaches, but the bad thing is that it takes up to 6 weeks to show up signs, so that's a long incubation period. And the bad news is that it is 38% fatal if you get it. So one of the way, actually in Long Island, there was a doctor a few years ago who cleaned out his garage, and there were poop droppings of mice, and he ended up dying from it as well, because it attacks the lungs just like COVID does, but it attacks the lungs intensely. And right now, there's no approved medicines, but in other countries, they're actually already tested, and they've used it in animals, and some people have used it in humans. There's an antiviral called favipiravir, and it is available in China, Japan. It was first made in Japan for the flu, but it seems that these RNA antivirals may work against this virus, including things like molnupiravir that was used in COVID, blocks RNA, that potentially a cocktail of these antivirals would work against this. The other thing that would be great is we need another Operation Warp Speed, and if anyone's listening in Washington, the great company in New York, I have no proprietary interest, is Regeneron and Dr. George Yancopoulos, who developed a mouse that mimics the human immune system. He created the Ebola virus IV antibody, the IV antibody for COVID, and if the government can get behind them to make an IV antibody for this Andes variant hantavirus, I think that would be a great service to get that, and also to get antivirals like favipiravir permitted for use in the United States as soon as possible in case this starts to spread or get out of control. Because unfortunately, because of the 6-week incubation period, I think we're going to hear of a lot more cases, because apparently people flew around from areas, Westchester, New Jersey, and various places around the country when they got off the cruise ship. So we're going to be hearing a lot more of that. But of course, the basic precautions we always talk about: try to stay healthy. If you're going to keep your vitamin D levels up, and if you're going to clean out a garage, a shed, or a basement, you should wear an N95 mask. And I bought a vacuum cleaner that has a HEPA filter, so whatever I use in a garage or basement with a vacuum cleaner, it has a HEPA filter in it, so you're less likely to aerosolize particles or bacteria that may be harmful or toxic to our lungs.
So if you have a HEPA filter in your vacuum cleaner, what happens?
It filters out a lot of the small bad particles, including mold spores, and a lot of basically feces particles that come from mouse droppings in basement. So you're less likely to blow it around as much, because it sucks in the bad bacteria and the mold and some of the things that can hurt the human lung. Because our lung is like a vacuum cleaner bag. That's why smokers and people like that, you look at their lungs, they look like black tar inside, because you can't get out a lot of particles, microplastics, and that's why the 9/11 people who suffered so many lung problems, because they sucked in all these things, all this burnt formaldehyde furniture that burnt up in the building during 9/11, all that went into people's lungs, and you get cancer and lung disease and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So our lungs are like a filter. So that's why even in our homes, in my home, I keep a HEPA air filter in my bedroom 24/7, and it keeps the particulate matter. And you see the filter once a month. It's all affected. Same thing with cars. I tell people twice a year, check your car filter and change your HEPA filter in your car, because of all the microplastics on the road from car tires that are wearing down, because we need to protect our lungs. It's not like the old days, the people who lived in the mountains or on the Greek islands that breathed in fresh air. And in the blue zones too, people who live longer, one of the things they have is clean air and clean water.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your information. And bottom line is, don't go to areas where you might find those kind of situations, and you're going to live longer and prosper.
And keep listening, where you always get the truth out every Sunday on the Cats Roundtable.
The Cats Roundtable.
Well, this is Sean Spicer, and he was President Trump's 45. He was the press secretary, and he has a new book, Trump 2.0. Sean, where do you want to start?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. You're getting my money's worth out of me on Sunday morning. I mean, we're working hard.
Well, we'd love.
I got to get ready for a show.
You're on at 10 o'clock this Sunday morning.
That's right.
What do you think you're going to talk about at 10 o'clock? Do you know yet?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about the president's trip to China, what he's accomplishing, what it means for, I think, obviously, a lot of focus on the economics. But I think there's a big political win here. The agricultural community is huge. You think about those races for governor and Senate in Iowa. his delivering for them, what the impact of this is going to have on jobs and the economy is going to translate politically. And then secondly, this whole redistricting is shifted significantly in the past 7 to 10 days. This has put new wind at the backs of Republicans headed into November. We're talking about a plus gain of at least 12 seats. Then we've seen South Carolina, after what happened in Indiana, say no because of the state Senate. 87 to 12 for adding a seat in the South Carolina House. But the state Senate, John, where they have a supermajority, the state Senate president said, no way, we're not taking that seat away from Jim Clyburn. Who knows? The way Congress is right now, that could be a decisive seat, so we'll talk about that, break it all down.
You know, Washington is crazy these days, and, we used to have a common sense Washington. What happened in the last 10 years?
I think what happened was Democrats enjoyed the monopoly they had on so many institutions, big tech, corporate America, academia, the media. And what has happened, especially in the era of Trump, I would say the past 10 years, is that monopoly has started to got broken up. What's that? Independent media, you take that, right? There's now all of these new outlets and other streaming that have created tension because these people who used to have a monopoly because they were deciding what we read, saw, and heard now have competition. They don't like that. Same thing in academia. The Trump administration going after them, not just academia, but in big tech, big corporate America. I think they're threatened by it. And because of that, they're willing to fight back. You look at Hakeem Jeffries making it very clear that he's willing to pack the court, make whatever quote-unquote judicial reforms he needs to make because they're not getting their way. And that's the problem, is that the Democrats and the left feel threatened, and that's why they're willing to now say and do whatever they need to do in a way that they haven't in the past.
I'm not feeling comfortable that we're getting that right now.
No, because think about what was really at stake in open borders. This was not about some humanitarian thing. There were women and children being trafficked. This was about the future of the Democratic Party. These guys as I said, they feel that they are under attack and under threat, so they'll do whatever. Why are they opposing the Save America Act? When you require benefits for the poor, WIC, SNAP, all of these things for housing, all of the things that no Democrat has ever objected to poor people having to show ID when it comes to getting benefits. And yet when it comes to voting, they suddenly care. Why? Because, again, that there's something bigger at stake here. And that's what's happening is the Democrats are trying to figure out how do they rig the system, how do they rig the game, and Republicans are finally standing up and calling their bluff.
Now, you wrote a new book.
Yes.
Trump 2.0. Tell us about it.
Understanding what happened in those 4 years between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0 is absolutely critical. He wasn't just hanging out at Mar-a-Lago or at Bedminster, right? He was meeting with people. He was talking to pollsters. He was plotting. His team, Brooke Rollins, Linda McMahon, Larry Kudlow, they all stood up America First Policy Institute. They were getting ready. And all of that was seen. And I can tell you as someone who was there on day one of Trump 1.0, there is a stark contrast to day one of Trump 2.0, but it wasn't by accident. I had a conversation. The president wrote the foreword to Trump 2.0. He and I have talked about this. What he did in Trump 1.0, historic, but it's very different. To not understand, John, what happened in those 4 years, and you know this better than anybody, the transformation to how we approached the beginning of Trump 1.0 and 2.0, the people, the process, the policies that he pursued, vastly different because he understood and he used that time wisely. And by the way, thanks to everyone in the listening audience, this book made the New York Times bestseller list last week. So a big thank you to everybody in your listening audience that did this.
Thank you, Sean Spicer. And I'll be listening to you at 10
All right,
o'clock
I'm
this
going
morning.
to get ready, boss.
All right, go get ready. With us today is Lynn Shaw with lynswarriors.org. What did we do this week to be able to save more of our kids?
Good morning, John. On Capitol Hill, we had our most successful last Tuesday rally in honor of survivor mothers who have lost their children to social media harms. We had 30 of them there with us, dead from sextortion, from cyberbullying, eating disorders, buying drugs on Snapchat. Here's what happened and why this is so exciting. The bill, Kids Online Safety Act, which we have been working on, John, for 4+ years, bipartisan, it's finally coming to a head. Now, let me give you a little background. Our sponsors are Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican, and Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat. We expected to come and speak to the mothers and to everybody who attended the rally. But here's the exciting part. Senator Ted Cruz moseyed on out of his office in the Capitol and came and gave a statement. Now, let me tell you why that is important. Because he right now has been holding up the bill, Kids Online Safety Act. He is the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. And he has promised that his committee will mark up this Kids Online Safety Act and that the Kids Online Safety Act would pass and be signed into law this year. And this is huge news because we have had in the Senate 91-3 support. The bill goes over to the House. It's been sitting there collecting dust. We need Senator Cruz with his committee and also Speaker Mike Johnson to bring this to a floor for a vote. So we started the chant on Capitol Hill, mark it up, which means you got to read it, you got to amend it, and you got to put it to a floor vote. And let's get this going. The session's almost over. And you know what? He's doing it. We have him on video. There was lots of press there, everybody from the Wall Street Journal to Reuters to CNN to Fox covering this. So we're holding his feet to the fire. He promised these parents and all of us that he will move this bill to the Senate floor for a vote, and he will get this done. So we believe the Kids Online Safety Act will begin to help all the families out there because it puts the onus on big tech that they have a duty of care, that they must put, when they put out their product, they have to make sure they have safety guardrails in place. So that's the good news with that, and it's very exciting.
Well, I'll give you the better news. The executives that run the companies that are giving funds to these senators or Congress people to make sure they don't pass the bill, we're going to put their picture in the newspaper with their name, rank, and serial number underneath of it.
You would have to take a complete newspaper, I'm not kidding when I say this, and have every picture because Congress right now is infiltrated by big tech. We all know it, working in all this child safety, this arena of everything. Listen, big tech right now has, we know Meta for sure, that's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. They have one lobbyist for every 4 members of Congress. Now, Lynn's Warriors doesn't have that, but you know what I have, John? I have truth. We have truth on our side. We have the parents on our side. We have the American public on our side. We have you on our side. We have WABC Radio, Red Apple Media. We have it all going on, and it's coming to a head. And so many of them, now, John, both Republicans and Democrats, they're all taking money. But we're breaking through. The pendulum is swinging back. This cannot sustain, and especially since we had the 2 recent court cases holding Meta responsible for harm to children. There are thousands more of these cases pending, and so they're going to have to do something. So everybody's going to have to, come to the table. For Ted Cruz, who really has been hiding out and has really been ignoring parents, has been ignoring, as well as Speaker Johnson, ignoring everything, finally coming to the table, finally meeting with us, finally putting it on out there for the public to hear in the media, we're going to get the job done. The pendulum is swinging back in our favor. But let's see where that goes because now we have AI, right? So is this just a temporary, John, kind of shut everybody up because, our focus is on AI and what we're going to get away with there? Because that's a whole other program what's happening with that right now. But you know what? For today, this is good news, John. This is really good news that parents are being listened to, families are being helped, and we're forever grateful for Senator Marsha Blackburn for really leading this cause, a tremendous asset in the Congress for family and child safety.
Well, she's doing a great job in Tennessee, and I think she's going to make a great governor someday. And thank you, Lynn Shaw, for what you do to save our children. And when you go to sleep at night, you've saved a few extra children every day. And let's catch up again real soon. LynnsWarriors.org. O-R-G.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. Every Sunday morning, we'll bring you the latest in what's happening in our community, our country, and the world. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a nice Sunday.